Okay, so we're live with the Node.js release working group call for the 5th of November 2020. We'll follow the agenda that is in the Node.js release repository, issue number 626. The items on the agenda are mainly to go through the release schedules, but first I'll ask if there are any announcements. Assume no announcements, so I will share my screen and we will take a look at each of the schedules for the releases. Apparently I will not share my screen because Zoom apparently doesn't have permission on this Mac. So I don't know if anyone else could share them and bring them up, or I can just paste a link to them if it's easier. Oh no, it's right now. I didn't need to restart Zoom. I assume you can see my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, that's better. Cool. So for Node 15, we are scheduled up until December. So probably don't need to talk much about that. I know Michael put a release out yesterday. So thanks, Michael. And we'll probably have 15.2 next week with Danielle. And I think that will be the first release you promote, I believe.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. If you need any help, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if we need to schedule any further in advance, to be honest. On there, Node 14 release plan. See where we are. So we're hoping to have a release in November, but we don't appear to have a date just yet. I should probably take an action after this meeting to build up the table now that 14's gone from current to active LTS. Build it up, probably aiming for the same kind of one release per month that we normally go for active LTS. So would anyone like to pick up the 14 release this month? I can possibly pick one up. Have to look at the dates, but I can probably pick one up. Could probably have a release candidate out within the next week or two and the release towards the end of the month.
Yeah, I was also looking forward to maybe cut one for 14 in this month, or we can sync up later to see what dates work.
Okay. Yeah, time I can offer to pair or just land some bits. I think maybe aiming for the 24th makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And try to get maybe I'll try and land some stuff on staging between now and next week. Hopefully have the proposal open at some point between the 10th and the 17th, giving almost 2 weeks before.
Right. Cool.
Sure. 12.
So I opened the RC for that on Tuesday. There's a little bit of work to still be done. I think people pointed out 1 or 2 commits that they'd like to see brought in. And I think it would also be a good idea in general to do a broader call. I guess one thing we need to do is update that, because I wanted to push it off to 3 weeks just to give a little bit more time for some of the module stuff to bake. So I'd like to have the release date be the 24th of November, if no one has any concerns with that.
No concerns for me anyway.
Is it okay if I speak? Okay. The only thing I'd say, which release is this?
12.20.0.
The only concern there might be the holiday in the US and folks not being able to update, but I don't know if that's something y'all consider or not.
Holidays on the 26th, and like in my personal opinion, it's not like people need to update. We're not doing a security release. We're not fixing major bugs. This is a Semver minor release. I don't think it's worth pushing a week for that. If it was a security release or something that required people to update, then I would agree with that. But otherwise, I think it's fine.
Cool.
Sure. Okay. And that will be the last release before maintenance, when we just go a bit more ad hoc and only as and when we need. Cool.
And I guess one note in there is I had gone through, I'm going to do one more check before like in the next week, but this should get the modules implementation inside of 12 to be more or less neck and neck with what's in 14 and 15. I think like the only really big difference at this point will be we won't be stabilizing it in 12, and it doesn't have top level await because it doesn't have the version of V8 that supports that. But all of the package JSON features and the common JS named imports, all that stuff works now. And I also went through, and it was a little bit of a slog, but the docs are all updated too, because there was some pretty extensive refactoring of the documentation.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Miles.
Welcome.
We don't normally talk about 10, but I guess there was a 10 release not long ago. I believe Richard did it. I guess we don't need to do another one for a while until we have some bugs that we need to get out. Would that be a fair assessment, Richard?
Yeah, I guess so. I think there was still quite a few open backport PRs on 10, but I don't think any of them were landable. I remember.
Yeah.
And no one's really pushing, as far as I'm aware, for things to land in 10. So I'm reasonably comfortable with not having to do a 10 release soonish. Yeah. But I guess we just need to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Okay. So looking good on the upcoming releases. I guess take a quick look at the pull requests. I don't know if you all spotted the adding V8 to the schedule. I think we've all approved this one, V08, sorry. So we can probably I'll just merge this after the meeting.
Yeah, I didn't see any real downside to it.
Agreed. In terms of open issues, just as we've not used up much time, is there anything that stands out to anyone that we should talk about particularly? I guess the changelog changes, that's kind of, I saw the 15 PR that went out yesterday. We kind of broke the changelog down into test doc changes, etc. I don't know if we want to codify that at some point. Might be nice.
I guess like my only request, and I don't think that this would be a huge deal, but like if we did want to start like more consistently breaking it up that way, I'd want to work that into Node Core utils so that we could automate it, which I think should be possible, especially since we have like the subsystems. But if we're going to codify it, I'd very much like it to be automated instead of creating like more manual work.
Yeah. Sorry, I think that's what I kind of meant with changelog maker. Make it output it in that kind of form consistently.
Okay, cool. Sorry, misunderstood.
Cool. Yeah. I guess that's just work, volunteer work that.
Hey, you at home, want to do some work? Do we have a PR for you?
And there's a lot of it. We still have not renamed the Citrm team, I don't think, to release automation. But I think we were considering doing like an audit of members. So I wonder if it's worth spinning up an issue for that to audit all the members of release, because of the access that comes with release. Maybe it's a good time to say to some. I don't think there's many people that are not active in the release working group, but it might be something we should check routinely.
I think with this, and we talked about it briefly, like, I think it's good to go through an audit of the whole team structure, because to be honest, I was looking at it recently and it doesn't make a lot of sense, which I think is part of what like the proposal there was. But like, there's like the release team, then there's the Sitgem team, then there's the LTS team, there's the backporters team. It's not really like necessarily super clear who owns what decisions anymore. And then there's a bunch of people that have been coming to this meeting, so we don't really have like a working group anymore. Like that's just like a clear list of the people that are in the working group. So it might be worth coming through and like kind of rethinking the structure of the team as a whole.
Yeah, I guess that also factors in. I know, Rory, you kind of expressed interest in doing a full team release, and I think that would include being moved into the LTS team members. But I don't know if that's still a distinction we want to continue to make. Or
Yeah, it's a great question.
So what I think, and we could figure it out. I don't know if we want to think about it like a merit badge approach, but it's like I actually think that the cutting the release and the backporting as kind of being two different things. And to me, what's actually more important from the LTS side is that whoever's doing the backporting has been like kind of like onboarded and vetted, that they have like a good understanding of what should land and what shouldn't land. And I think that's actually to a certain extent like separate from cutting the release itself, which we didn't really make that distinction in the past. It was just like the LTS team does the whole thing. But like, I think it's worth maybe exploring that as like kind of two separate bits, which also could be separate from like the working group, because we could have the working group and then we could have releasers and backporters. And those could kind of be like bit flips that give you the ability to either make a release or land backports. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think that more reflects the work that we're currently doing.
Yeah.
I guess my thoughts would be these days, how different are those two groups of people? So the people doing the backport and people doing releasing. Sorry, the people landing LTS backports and the people doing releasing tends to be a very close mapping of the same people.
Well, Anna did a whole bunch of backports for 12 and she's not a releaser.
Yeah, and we've given Anna the ability to land on that branch. I guess like one of the examples, and then the flip side would be like Roy and Danielle are still like ramping up and don't necessarily do backporting yet, but that shouldn't like stop them from being able to do the release if other people are backporting.
Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable if, you know, as long as we've got like, if we continue to do the sort of planning to have at least a week's release candidate sort of type thing, not so much the release candidate itself, but that the proposal goes up and people have time to review the proposal, you know, then the more people that can backport, I'm happy with that. It's just a check, isn't it, to make sure that nothing goes out that we don't want to go out.
To me, it would be say one of the members of the LTS team lands a load of things on 40 next staging, and then someone who's not in LTS tries to create a release and something needs backing out, or maybe something additional needs pulling in to fix a bug. Not having the permission or authority to pull it in when you need to might be a little confusing. I think if you're creating a release, you need to have control over the staging branch, because I don't know, I find I often have to pull extra things into it after my proposal's been opened.
Definitely, I don't see how you can do a release without being able to push to the staging branch.
Yeah, and I guess like getting into the weeds of it, for what it's worth, like if you were doing the release and you found that something needed to be pulled out or landed, I think that that's like a little bit of a distinct case from the like going through and auditing like 300 commits. But perhaps that's a distinction that we don't need to make if we have multiple people who can review the release itself. I guess like the challenge that I would see here, and it's just one that I've struggled with in the past, I don't know the answer, but it's like when you're auditing the commits to land it, like you're looking at the commit, you're looking to see if there are like known bugs, if there's other things that are related. And so if we need to go and review every single commit for that, like that just seems like a lot of duplicated effort. So like, I think that there's a benefit in like the person who's doing the backporting being kind of like trusted. But maybe, I don't know. I guess like Richard and Beth, who have also been doing this for a long time, do you have different feelings about that?
I'm just not sure how we can make that distinction where like anyone can land anything on the branch, and we take the assumption that once something's landed on the even staging branches that it's been audited and it should kind of live there unless it trips up tests or anything. How you would, I don't know how you can make the distinction, because if the releases have permission to push to these branches anyway, you're not going to probably look for and say who landed this to trust.
I'm not too concerned about releases having access to the branches, because I think if we've given someone the bit to push releases and promote them, we're implicitly trusting them, and the onboarding should be enough to say, look, if you're not sure, ask or don't land something. It's always easier to not land something and land it later than land something that shouldn't have landed. So I guess the question there is really just about the expanded people outside of release that would be allowed to backport. And there's not too many at the moment, and I guess that's just a trust question, I guess. We don't really have like an onboarding for backporters, I guess, other than what's in the one of the guides in core does talk about backporting, because I know somebody made some changes recently to try and clarify things like you know don't when things could be backported, because I think some people were trying to backport to the maintenance LTS releases. But yeah, there's a difference between people opening the backport PRs and people then landing the PRs on the staging branch. So yeah.
I guess like maybe we could just move forward with like, you know, to your point, the people who have release permissions, who honestly at this point, it's like, I think it's Danielle and Roy who are the two that are releasers that haven't really done LTS releases.
Right.
Not to just like directly call you, well, and I guess like Targos hasn't really, but it's like, you know, to that point, we can just trust them to do the right thing and to ask for help if they need it. And I guess like to work with someone on auditing for the first couple times.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I don't think we need to, but I know before we've said you must do so many currents before that you kind of get onboarded to LTS, but I don't think we particularly need to do that, especially with what Richard says. We're going to be reviewing these. The mentoring that we do now says to ask for help and etc. So I think we would catch anything.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think that we have more trouble with the backporting side of just trying to understand, like Mark said, what relies on what, and some of them, things like, for example, streams and modules, we are heavily reliant on the teams looking after those areas to advise when things should and shouldn't land. It's
and I guess other than that, like the really important thing, which folks can pick up quickly, is just going through and making sure that there aren't like outstanding bugs that aren't fixed, or if there are bugs for a change, to just make sure the fixes for those bugs come in as well.
Yeah, and what we don't have, and I don't know if there is a good solution for this, is any way of easily automating tooling to say, you know, when something shows up on branch diff, that there's no easier way I'm aware of to, other than opening the PR and sort of reading through and see if it links to anything that, you know, a PR has not had some follow-up work or an outstanding issue because we don't have a formal sort of linking process. And I don't necessarily say we need one, but that's where the complexity comes in, isn't it? With landing things.
Okay. Sounds like our next steps are maybe to come up with another draft kind of team structure, kind of where the conversation started, and part of that will factor in like the distinction between LTS releases and releases.
Okay.
I guess the easiest way would be to open a PR. maybe
Yeah.
maybe without the names, but added in, but just what we think it would look like. Okay, add that to the minutes. It's something I might have time to take a look at. Anything else attention grabbing in the issue tracker that anyone wants to raise, discuss, talk about? No, I can probably take an action to skim through our backlog. I think there are a couple of things in there that we might be able to close or maybe move to the appropriate places.
Fair enough.
Other things, trying to rerun on 15, just still trying to get a completely green SitGym, which is yeah, we may not ever get there, but I'm periodically rerunning it, keeping an eye on open PRs to see if things have been patched. It's looking okay. I'll do another rerun today and see what happens. But if that's everything, then probably there. And speak to you all later.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.